2023 is at its beginning and we're just a couple weeks in. We're already getting hit with some video game bangers. About 3 years ago, I reviewed a game from Arcade Crew and Joy Masher called Blazing Chrome. It was an awesome homage to Contra, more specifically Contra Hardcore. It very much felt like it, and I absolutely loved it. Well, they have once again brought us down from the gaming heavens, a brand new retro style game, and it's good. It's really good. Vengeful Guardian Moonrider. Before we get started, today's sponsor is my Patreon page. If you'd like to support my content, you can become a GamerThumbTV patron and gain access to my Patreon feed and Discord channel, filled with early access YouTube videos, weekly progress reports, behind the scenes posts, and sneak peeks at upcoming projects. Click the link in the description below. If I asked you a question, I guess to the old farts like me that were playing video games in the 90s, what makes a character cool? What would you say? Maybe a bandana over your head like Ryu from Street Fighter, Richter Belmont from Castlevania, Rambo, maybe some sunglasses, Rash from Battletoads, a skateboard like Bart Simpson, ninjas, robots. Now those last two, ninjas and robots, what happens if you combine those two? You get cyber ninjas. That was the ultimate coolness. And that's what Moonrider does, but actually, technically, Cyber Shadow was a cyber ninja. This is more of a cyber samurai, but whatever, you get the point. And he's got a motorcycle, hell yeah. A cyber samurai with a motorcycle and a laser sword. Yes, 90s cool. Arcade Crew and Joy Masher's focus is to bring brand new retro style games to new consoles, and Moonrider is a perfect example of how to do it right. There's so many influences here, from classic retro titles, from Contra, to Mega Man, to Ninja Gaiden, the list goes on. I'll go over all of that, but I mean, look at that thing in the background here. That's totally Ninja Gaiden inspired, with that dragon statue, demon statue, whatever they were trying to find. First, let's talk about the story. When and where does Moonrider take place? In an unspecified future, an oppressive government's in control, and they rule with an iron fist. People are sick of it, so they start to revolt and rebel groups start forming. What's cool is that the story gives you just enough to want to be a badass slicing through all the enemies in front of you. You don't quite know what exactly led to this future. In fact, one of the bosses implies that the current government was actually a direct response to some kind of previous rebellion or war of some kind, but they never elaborate on it. If we put it in Star Wars terms, it's kind of like how this era is the Galactic Empire and we know there was some kind of clone war, but we don't know the details behind it yet, who were the good guys, who were the bad guys. But none of it matters. What matters now is the current plot. The government keeps the populace under control with these cyber weapons they built, these super soldiers, these super cyber samurai warriors. Say that 5 times. During one event that the government calls a terrorist attack, they slaughter a bunch of people, and one of their super weapons, Vengeful Guardian Moonrider, wakes up to justice. That is such a simple, badass story, and a plot straight out of a late 80s future cyberpunk action movie. Something that you would randomly rent from the VHS store because the cover looked awesome. And you remember how RoboCop had those random infomercials that play through the movie for fictional products that were completely ridiculous? Moonrider does that same thing, something that only RoboCop fans would even recognize as a tribute. The devs making this game knew who they were making it for. Your goal as Moonrider is to turn against your creators, slay your fellow super weapons, and free the world from the grasp of the oppressive government. Now, I did mention Moonrider is influenced by several games from the retro era, but there's 2 in particular that have the absolute heaviest influence. Strider, and to my surprise, there's very heavy Mega Man gameplay elements. If you've played or even seen Strider, you'll immediately recognize the fast-paced action gameplay, running through the maps, jumping over obstacles, and slashing your way through enemies. It plays just like it, and the gameplay itself doesn't get much simpler than that ever. At its core, it's a fast hack-and-slash adventure. The levels are mostly linear. Yeah, some have different areas you can go to, left or right, up or down, but overall, you'll never really get lost. They're not giant labyrinths. The entire goal is to cut through the enemies till you get from point A to B and fight through every boss in your way. And some levels switch it up by having Moonrider whip out his motorcycle in these sections that are a ton of fun, speeding down highways and shooting bad guys from different viewpoints. And any good retro game has to have a healthy amount of bosses, and Moonrider delivers. Not only do you have end stage bosses, each stage also has several what you would normally call mini bosses, and some can be quite challenging and visually amazing, from different sorts of robots to vehicles to ugly fusions of cybernetics and organic. Graphically, the game's impressive, not by today's standards clearly, but by the standards of the era that it's trying to emulate. This would be right at home on the Sega Genesis. There's also a CRT filter that's there if you want to use it. These things are really just preference. I usually like to leave them off. Now that I've demonstrated to you the Strider style gameplay, let me explain the Mega Man portion, or what I should specify, more like Mega Man X style. Each stage is selectable in whatever order you want. There's really no right or wrong way, and each area has a boss responsible for protecting it, like Mega Man. You pick a stage, you fight your way through, and the boss appears at the end, complete with the Mega Man X warning alarm and pre-fight dialogue.
ならここで終わりだ。
Every boss is designed very well, with fairly easy to learn attack patterns. Once you get the patterns down, you can take them on without too much trouble. You learn how to counter, avoid each attack, hit the boss enough, and then the most Mega Man thing possible happens. That's right, every time you destroy a boss, you get their powers. Fire powers, Giga Punch floor powers, there's a bunch. My favorite being this dimensional portal that fires a tentacle out of it. I use this thing constantly, it tore enemies apart. Once again, a perfect fusion between Strider and Mega Man with a little side of Contra Hardcore. That cyber robo future still feels like Contra. Another aspect that's been used in Mega Man games as well is some kind of chip system. There's these secret chips you can find throughout the game. They affect your stats, like adding a double jump to your moves and increasing your defense, and they seem to be fairly well hidden. I only found a couple in my playthrough, but this is a game I will be playing multiple times. 90% of the reason I'll probably play it again is the music. Good lord, that music. It's that Capcom Mega Man X style music, and some tracks mixed in with some Japanese instrumental music. Just listen. By the way, this stage is a huge air fleet. You're jumping from one ship to the other up in the sky until you get to the boss. Remind you of something from Mega Man X? Maybe Storm Eagle? What about after you beat that boss? Remind you of something? You mean like Storm Eagle? Again, Mega Man influence. And it works perfectly. With one playthrough, I got about 70% of the trophies. Most of them involve just getting through the game. Nothing too extravagant here, but others do require you to get a higher rank on each mission, which can get tough, and there's one for beating a mission without taking any damage. That one's going to be challenging. Still doable, I would say, and there's no difficulty trophies since the game has no difficulty settings. It does pose a slight challenge depending on your skill level, and you can always adjust the chips on Moonrider to either help or hinder you. Some chips increase defense. There's another that makes you die in one hit, if you'd like such a challenge. The campaign itself can be beaten in about 2 hours or so. Your first thought might be, damn, that's short. But it's about as long, actually longer, than many actual retro games of this same style. And its $17 price tag, I would say that more than justifies its length. At $60, that would have been too much. $17, perfect. What you've seen here today is the PS5 version, but it doesn't really matter what you get it on. It's the same game, just get it. Buy Vengeful, Guardian, Moonrider. It's also on PS4, Switch, Windows, and Amazon Luna, if anyone actually plays on that. But yeah, sure, it's there. I don't know anyone that does. That about covers my thoughts on Moonrider. I want to hear your thoughts about it. And what other games from the 90s and this fast-paced action style did you enjoy? Start the conversation below. We'll catch you later.
だ。